if a judge views a person as as that person. And I think a lot of it comes from the difference between 30 years ago and now, the family breakdown. I mean, there's less of a support system now there's more broken homes, things like that. And I think that the crime rate is rising because of family values, parents have to work 2 jobs, things like that. So I mean, you can't really pin it on one specific area as to why someone would commit a crime. But I think until we address these issues, it's not going to pass. And that's just my opinion. I'm not representing the sheriff's office, but
Thank you very much.
yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is the information that you have public? When
No.
somebody looks at the jail roster, can they tell this person's been arrested 5 times?
No.
3 years?
And what I did was pretty time consuming. I in between my duties at work and on my own home, this is a lot of my free time. I just went through manually and figured out like the previous arrest. I had to manually do that, and that was time consuming. And that's not that's not available to the public. The I reports online is, but I'm talking just Johnson County. Now, I guess I should stress that those arrests, that's just Johnson County. That's not their entire criminal history.
Sure.
So I mean that makes it in my opinion a little bit worse. And the one thing I would kind of stress is the jail roster that we have online. It's a little, it's not very user friendly. So when people do get their stats, it can be not accurate in the fact that one of our listings was for an other guy first with special circumstances, which turned out to be a felony. People aren't going to take that into account.
Well, that it wasn't designed for that purpose.
Well, I know.
To do that level of research.
I know, but
Brian, I guess here's a comment about both with you and John, and John Neff. We've seen statistics from John long
Sure.
before I was a supervisor. People's concerns about the criminal justice system vary dramatically.
Sure. I agree.
And so contact is one issue.
Yeah.
Okay, people never get arrested. Okay, just they're stopped on for having dinner with their sister and standing on the street corner like one of our staff members.
Sure.
Okay, we don't have any stats on that, and that was kind of what Rod was trying to get at. If I, as a law enforcement officer, stop and ask you what you're doing, or I pull you over, it depends on the department. If I actually pull you over and then I don't issue a ticket or warning or anything, was there any statistics kept on that? And the answer is, it depends. Okay, so that's one set of statistics is contact. And then arrests that don't necessarily contribute to our jail capacity issues. It's like the overnight arrest. I get arrested at midnight.
Sure.
I either get, my friend shows up and I go home with him immediately, or I see the judge at what time, Janet, on the video? 8. Those people aren't really part of our jail population.
And to be honest, that's why
And
I
then
don't include in my stats overnight.
you don't even include the overnight.
Because that changed so much.
And
right?
so people's concerns about various law enforcement agencies are often about the first 2. And you can have concerns about the first 2 and not have concerns about the actual jail population of that entity. So you can be concerned about X police department having too many driving while black or walking while black contacts. Too many college kids partying too much, and not have concerns about them about real arrests that end up in jail population. And so some of the concerns you hear being addressed at different law enforcement may not be at all about who they have there for 2 or 3 weeks or whatever.
And I, I would think that, I'm sure you see guys, been doing jail stuff, criminal justice meetings, that there's been so much talk about racial disparity where, I would think any law enforcement officer in this county would be foolhardy to profile someone.
But yet they do.
So, who?
Latasha Massey down the hall stopped for having dinner with her sister and standing on the street corner and asking what she was doing on the street corner, giving her sister a hug goodbye.
Then we need to call that officer then.
Our
We need to-
deputy auditor pulled over my neighbor kid who got stopped out of the same McDonald's within an hour of each other. I mean, everybody has a story.
We need to track the officer then, and we're getting
And that's not, I just want to caution you that that's sometimes what people are talking about. It isn't actually the people who are there in pretrial. I've studied those lists. I think they deserve to be there. I've yet to find a lot of those people that don't deserve to be there. But I still have dramatic concerns about the beginning of it. And so, and I guess that's, everybody can throw every stat they want, but the community, the broader community's concerns aren't always about one part of this
And I understand,
discussion.
like, policing practices, I'm sure, it's, that's why I'm a big advocate of Neurosurvival has the body camera and the mics. And, I honestly, I wish every officer had that, because I would love to have that on all the time and just be able to push play.
Except for when you ask to see a copy of it, they won't show it to you.
Well, I mean, that's their policy, I don't know what ours would be if we did have it, but, I don't know.
Somebody told you that you couldn't see the video?
Not me, but,
We're getting a little off topic here. Maybe we can focus back on.
but, like I said, I just think that, it's, we're not gonna see you in jail until some issues are resolved. Like I said, we can quibble about, if someone's in there for an actual violent arrest or not. I deal with these people every night. I know the overall stories. I know what's more going on besides just that charge that's written on the jail roster stat. I see their demeanor. I know their criminal history, things like that. How many times, they're recidivists. And you can't get that from just looking at the charge that's on the screen. You can have, a perfect example is one of our murder charges has only been arrested twice, both simple misdemeanors, one for intox, simple, one for disorderly. He's now charged with attempted murder. I mean, you can't, always, predict who's gonna do what.
Brian, I have a question for you. I want to change the topic a little bit, but I want to go to something that you talked about. I'd just like to get a rough estimate from you. And I saw Dave Wagner was here and walked out, which is too bad because he might have a better view. But I'm concerned about the number of times that I hear deputies talk about that either one inmate assaults another or an inmate assaults an officer, and that basically officers are having to get involved in physical altercations. How often would you say that happens?
I would think the inmate on inmate violence has gone down to almost non-existent, in my opinion. I would have to think long and hard about when's the last time I had to go into a block and separate two people. I'm not saying it doesn't happen,
Right.
but I would have to label it as rare. As far as inmate on deputy contact, that's a little harder to explain because most of my issues or the problems that I have to, when I have to go hands-on are the ones who are in like an overnight arrest, not the general population. I have maybe gone hands-on with some of the general population a handful of times, as opposed to someone would get in, it's overnight arrest, they're highly intoxicated, they're a week ago, we had this guy who was tweaking on meth. That went south fast. And he was driving, by the way.
I see that Dave is back. Dave, would you mind coming up
Thank
for
you
just a
for coming.
second? Sure. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Brian. Maybe you can follow up a little bit, because I kind of put Brian on the spot. One of my concerns is the number of times
an officer, or shoves an officer, or bumps an officer, are you reporting that somehow?
Not a bug or anything like that, it would be in sight. And if we use precautions like putting handcuffs on an individual for court, in the courtroom, at the jail, we would not report that.
Okay.
If somebody became violent in the courtroom, at the jail, and then we have court Monday through Friday at the jail over the video camera, if someone became violent, didn't like what the judge said, and suddenly stood up and got aggressive, and the deputies had to restrain that person, yes, that would be reported.
But if two inmates get into an altercation, and you have to go in and, like, take them apart and calm them down, is there some sort of report made on that now?
Probably an internal report, a documentation on an inmate log, but as far as raising it to the level of the state jail inspector, no.
Okay, one night, I was at the jail, not as a guest, as a visitor, just to clarify that. There was I don't even, University Police had brought this individual in, and as it was alcohol, and anyway, he got in an altercation with our officers, and you guys called, whatever you call it, where everybody comes to help, and I mean, he literally shoved one of the officers, and anyway, you didn't press charges against him. And I asked why, I was just curious, and the answer was, he's drunk, he'll sober up or soon, and you know, it wasn't that big a deal, it happens all the time. But I'm curious, you keep a record of that now, or not? And that kind of gets to Ron's question.
What would be documented on that prisoner's log? There's some, obviously, discretion that goes into this.
Even though you don't,
charging
like,
systems.
press charges against him for assaulting an officer,
We
it's a
would-
documented.
We would document that on the inmate prisoner log.
Okay.
I'm
Steve,
not familiar with the new recording system. We've tracked assaults, and obviously, the new system Dave talks about sounds like it lumps restraints and assaults all together. So that could be a little misleading when we're talking about the number 12. Because my guess, the majority of those have been restrained because they're a danger to themselves or to the staff when they come into the jail, generally during the intake process.
But that's kind of what I'm getting at, because my concern is, I don't feel like our employees should be put in dangerous situations, whether it's.
I think when we talk about the aspect that we led the state of Iowa in those assault categories, was when our population was pushed up to the limit, and we were overcrowded within our own institution. Once we implemented the policy that we're gonna put a benchmark number, and we're gonna house the rest of the inmates outside of Johnson County, those numbers came way down.
Now we're consistent with other facilities, as far as you know.
As far as I know, I think that is accurate. Obviously, statistically, we're not way up like we were, and we have provided a much safer environment to both the inmates and the staff. Obviously, that environment comes at a cost to the taxpayers.
I think it's safe to say, though, that, and Dave can correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's safe to say that the majority of the problems are that initial booking when initially someone comes in. It's usually the intoxicated individuals or high individuals or ones that really have issues. That's when the majority of the physical contact ends up happening, where the deputies have to go hands-on. As you saw, Janelle, it's pretty common for that to happen and no charges be filed.
So it's not the guy that's sentenced to 30 days.
No.
Well, and this, a half hour.
Virtually, I bet I can count on one hand over 10 years how many people have come in and fought that were coming in for a sentence. There's something else. Usually, they may show up for a sentence and they're intoxicated, and then all of a sudden they realize that they're in trouble for coming in intoxicated, and things go awry.
And that's exactly where it happened. It's that tight hallway of the booking, and you know, and I said, you know, I'm impressed that you showed restraint and not giving him another charge. And they said, he's drunk, he'll sober up soon, and he'll regret that he did this. But a half hour later, he was crying and asking for his mother, and he was sobering up. I mean, but it is in that tight area. I mean, that's where most of those
And that's-
happen.
And that's the danger zone for our staff, when you're accepting an inmate. I mean, think about you're dealing with a person who has had their freedom taken away from
Sure,
them.
they're agitated.
And they're agitated, likely intoxicated, or under the influence of something in many situations. And, you know, the slang for it, you can call it Budweiser courage or whatever, and you know, things get hairy. And that's where our staff is at their greatest danger. But they're also at a high level of danger when they do, in fact, have to go into the blocks to separate. But we don't have that happen as often because of being able to transport people to other facilities and hold them there. But that's not to say, we were talking about this internally, it's not to say that we don't have to deal, we don't have to deal with, there are issues that, don't kid yourself, in a facility like we have, there's bullying going on, there's block bosses, because we're physically walking around a linear style jail 2 times an hour or so, and looking through a viewport. So newer style jails that are safer for our staff have people physically in there, and you're in the block and you're watching and listening to what's going on. They are much more safer, the inmates are much more safer in a facility like that. So as long as we have this facility, our inmates are going to be in danger, because there are going to be block bosses, bullies, whatever you want to call them, and our staff's going to be in greater danger. It's a simple fact of life.
Because of the layout.
The linear jail or the modular jail, obviously having someone in there, they know the vibes and the sense of what's going on there, they're to manage that block and stuff, so.
Direct supervision.
Yeah, so we take that away. And I know that we were discussing the other high anxiety times when we move inmates from our jail to another jail. That's a high anxiety time. They're moving out of the facility they may feel more comfortable with. Don't want to go away from Johnson County where they may have when we were talking about support systems, what little support system they have is here. We're taking and moving them elsewhere. That support system's lost, and that frustrates a lot of inmates. And we've had situations where people tense up and don't want to be taken and moved, so we have to deal with that. But, Jenna, I thought you brought up a good point. I think Captain Wagner's staff is very compassionate when they're dealing with the inmate to the best of their ability. And they know that when people come in and they're intoxicated or have mental health issues, they are good at recognizing that and trying to deal with it appropriately.
Thank you. Question for Dave, Steve, Bonnie, on this topic? Thanks for asking our
Thanks for letting me put you on the spot.
We're kind of going back and forth between public and entities and law enforcement and public. Did anyone else wish to speak to us this week? Which role are you going to run?
Thanks for coming.
Actually, sort of both, I suppose. Joe Rasmussen, business representative for public professional maintenance employees, local 2003. I represent both the county attorney's employees and the sheriff's office employees. And I guess from my perspective, having done this work for a long time, I've seen the inner workings of the Lane County Jail, I've seen the inner workings of Blackhawk County Jail, even facilities in very small rural counties that have just recently been rebuilt and replaced. And the only message I really wanted to bring today was this. I've sat through the courthouse input session. I didn't know what you'll hear again on Monday, so I'm going to take this opportunity to get what I want to say out. While all of those arguments and opinions are based on good principles and good ideologies, from the union standpoint, toss that stuff out the window. Our concern really lies with workplace safety, because both where the county attorney's employees are working or the sheriff's office employees are working, that is an unsafe work environment. And it needs to be fixed. And it needs to be fixed sooner than later. And I see your schedule set up for October. And I guess I would urge you to try and make October the decision. Whether we split these issues in two, or whether you proceed with the perfect solution, or whatever the solution is, They even urge you to try and make October the decision. Let's try and move this thing forward, get a decision, get a direction, and try and address this really serious workplace safety issue. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Jim. I'll just say about October, after the last bond referendum, let's fight back to the drawing board because there's a lot of statistics and a lot of research that have been done over 13 years, so you don't have to recreate all that. But we didn't have clear direction about where we wanted to go. 7 people, you've got to get 3 supervisors, and Lonnie and Janet were close to that, to have a path we want to go. And so we're literally just kind of feeling this out. We did the public input sessions in August, and Jerry Keel suggested this exercise, not exercise, a bad word, but, you know, to try to gather in more governmental bodies, and then another, and we added a big input session. I'm not clear on the 14th if we will get to any sort of consensus. Hopefully, we'll have this room plastered with those gigantic Post-it notes of things people want to know or information they need to know, and more things they need to gather. And I just don't want anyone in the public to think we have a secret timeline. We don't. That doesn't mean it's later than or sooner. It just, we don't have a timeline yet. And hopefully on the 14th, we may get to something.
Let's just not be the United States Congress.
We're still open to business. Joe's kind of both public and private here, and Brad Kunkel probably serves that role too.
Yeah, I'll wear 2 different hats here. I'm Brad Kunkel. I've worked at the Sheriff's Office. I'm a sergeant. I've been there 12 years, and I'm also on the City Council and so on. So I'll wear 2 different hats, and I'll be brief. To put on a council hat, I'll look at this from a fiscal standpoint, long term. We hadn't really talked about today. I mentioned this at the forum I went to where Janelle and Ricky Wilson in attendance. I'll pack. It goes 2 sides. When we look forward and talk about what we're going to do as far as the jail, there's that argument that's thrown out there about maybe building for current needs. I really think that's just, well, it's short-sighted. And what I mean is you're setting a future board and county up for the same problem. If you fill for current needs, we're going to be having this discussion in 5 years again. So I would just encourage you to think bigger, think the 200 and I can't remember how many beds this last proposal was whittled down to. But if you fill for current needs, it's going to be full on the first day, and we are going to be having this conversation in 5 years. So I just encourage you, don't set up future elected officials to be having the same conversation in a few years. And switching gears, when we start talking about the whole bond issue, and this goes back more towards really Janet's field. At what point are we working so hard to get bonds lowered that we are working harder getting somebody out of jail and forgetting about the victim behind the crime also? I can think of a couple recent conversations I've had with people, with crime victims, where somebody's gotten out of jail because they're bonding them or whatever, and then I hear from them, how is this possible? Why are they not still in jail? And actually both of those were for alcohol-related crime. One of them involved a defendant who was involved in a serious accident, seriously hurt somebody else. At their initial appearance, the bond was lowered from the warrant. I took a phone call from a family member down the road who was, he was using, coarse language because he was so upset, wanting to know how this is possible. How is this person not in jail? And they went back and looked up the criminal record of that person on their own, on my reports online. But this happens. We start forgetting about the victims also. What are we supposed to tell them when people are getting out of jail that shouldn't be in jail? To turn around and hurt people again, and in the end, you have crime victims who start losing faith in the system also. So we just can't lose sight of that there are people that are in jail that need to be there, and we need to protect the victims also. So that's all I wanted to say. I won't take the questions, I'll take a couple, but I need to keep my kids from the bus. Thanks, Brad.
Thanks, Brad. I think your victim comment was, it needed to be said, so thank you for saying it.
again, it's from the spending, standpoint, and again, we just don't want the same people we have hash this out and wonder why it wasn't solved years ago, because we're, as government officials, we're supposed to think long-term and think for the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Brad. Anyone else wishing to speak today? Thought I've lost like basically everyone here. Our next meeting is October 7th at 6 o'clock in courtroom 3A. It is a complete public input. What we're going to try to do is hear from as many voices as possible. We haven't entirely talked about a limit, but I would, if you're going to prepare to talk, I think I would work on 3 to 5 minutes per person, and we get through everybody before you speak a second time. We'd really like to hear from a lot of voices. I hope you'll put that out on your Facebooks and Twitters and blogs and whatnot. We would love to see a variety of voices on Monday, October 7th, 6 o'clock in courtroom 3A of the Johnson County Courthouse. I will caution anyone that comes not to park in the GSA lot. The last time we did this, we got a lot of people locked into it. So while the gates will be up when you get there, they will not be up when you leave. So do not park in that catty corner area. Lonnie it was a very cold night, and Lonnie and Steve were helping a number of people who had locked their cars in that parking lot. So please do not park in the GSA lot. They should be able to park in the court.
They can park.
Anywhere in the courthouse.
Any of the parking meters are all.
Any of the parking meetings are around the courthouse, and everybody will be gone.
5, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
So park actually in the courthouse or in the meters, and don't park in the GSA lot, because we can't get you out, and we'll have to give you a ride home. Anything else from anybody?
Thank you.
All right, we're adjourned.